Hey, this is Rob, and this is episode 67 of the Folly Coffee Podcast. Let's get it brewing. All right, I am here with Zach Vraa, and I don't know exactly what to say of. Usually I go so-and-so of this, and so I'm going to go with how I know Zach Vraa first. Zach Vraa of Rosemount High School football is where we first met. Actually, we didn't meet at that point. We just played against each other. I first met you at the Twin Cities Donut Brawl. So you're Zach Vraa of one of the co-founders of the Twin Cities Donut Brawl, and also as of this year, A to Z Creamery. But the first time I met you, you reached out. We need a coffee supplier for the Twin Cities Donut Brawl, and I go, wait a second, I recognize this name. I go, did you play football? And he said, yeah. I go, yeah, you were like a badass wide receiver in high school, and I got to roommate with Garrett Glaus. Shout out Garrett at the Minnesota All-Star football game. And I reached out to him and I go, do you know him? He's like, yeah, of course I know him. So I thought that was really funny that we had, weirdly enough, met all the way back in like 2008, played football against each other, and it goes full circle. And now I'm serving coffee at your Twin Cities Donut Brawl. And now it's awesome to see all the things you're doing here.
Yeah, the first time we meet now is in the food industry. We both started out in sports.
Well, and that's the funniest part to me is I want to go back to your story because I think you've got a pretty unique story in terms of like food and beverage and how you got into it. You've got the Instagram page Vraa Money Eats, Vraa Money _eats, yep, where you are famous for the donut walk. Obviously, donut is a big focus of that, but burgers, food, everything in between. Mm-hmm. Let's go all the way back. So you have a really kick-ass high school football career. You then go off to play at North Dakota State, one of, if not the top AA program in the country. For 6 years, battling 3 collarbone injuries.
Yes.
End up winning. How many national titles did you win in North Dakota State while you were there?
Believe it or not, 5. My very first year when I was a freshman, I got hurt early on, hence the 6 years. So, the whole thing was new to me. And then every year that I played, I guess I sat out a little bit of the second year too, but then we won 5 in a row after that. So I felt like I was there right at the beginning of the quote-unquote dynasty, they call it.
I don't think I've met many college football players that are like, I was around for 5 championships. I was like, how does one even do that?
Most people are around for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I can say that I was there for 5 championships, let alone 6 years.
So how did that happen? That you're there, so 6 years, obviously injury related. How does that go down? Freshman year is your first injury?
Yep, freshman year is my first injury. Got hurt during fall camp, so like right away. And then I took a red shirt. And then the next year, completely healthy, came back for spring ball, felt fine, got hurt during the second game. And then I decided, well, I can't redshirt. And then the athletic trainer and my head coach was like, hey, did you consider taking a medical redshirt? And then I'm like, shoot, well, I go through 1 entire more year, then I stay for 4 more. And they said it's not something that I have to decide that at that time. But after my 5th year, I can choose to come back for a 6th if I want. So luckily, I didn't have to choose my sophomore year when I'm 19 years old. Yeah, I want to stay here for 5 more years, But it was nice to have the option. So 2 injuries, 2 years in a row, and then I played for 4.
So you're a 20-year-old, technically redshirt freshman in your 3rd year of college.
Yes.
How does that work with school when you are going on your 6th year? Like, how does that work with classes and your studies? How does that all mix into it?
So I graduated in, 4.5 years technically, or 5 years. So I had 2 full semesters where I didn't really, I could have taken any class I wanted to. I had to be enrolled in at least 12 credits because it's an NCAA rule that you have to be in the bare minimum. If I hadn't had graduated, I could be in 1 class because it's either you take as many credits as you need to graduate or you enroll in at least 12 credits. And I should have played it better because if I would have just kind of slacked for 4 years, I could have technically graduated in 6 and just taken the bare minimum. But since I took, 15, 17 credits or so, I graduated a little bit early, decided to get an art minor. So then I got an art minor for the next year that I was there, and then I took a couple fun classes too.
And you go out 6 years, 5 national championships, not a bad way to do it.
Yep.
You also, had a brief encounter with the Vikings. Is that
I did, yes.
What was that like?
After I graduated, moved out to Austin, Texas to train. I lived with my uncle down there. Went through a whole training regimen. Came back, did pro day. I got a lot of exposure, hence because of Carson, obviously. So I did some workouts with them.
Anybody who's listening, Carson Wentz was at NDSU at the same time. So that pro day, the way pro days work is that you either have to, correct me if I'm wrong, you can go to the pro day of the school you went to or the state you're from. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's rules behind it. But
why can I remember that and I forget? Why is that in my brain right now still?
I'm not sure. I think you can choose to do 2 pro days, so I could have done the pro day at the Gophers because I'm from Minnesota,
right.
But then I could do the NDSU one. I don't know the total regulations behind it, but I ended up just doing the NDSU one. Tons of, NFL coaches were there because they were all looking at Carson. Nothing came out of that. Obviously, Carson got picked up and drafted. I was living with a buddy that lived in Fargo at the time, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was literally waiting for a phone call. I got a part-time job at Hornbacher's, which is basically the Fargo Cub Foods for people around here, because I needed to make some money. I didn't want to leave and get a full-time job because I didn't want to get a job and then quit if I got called in. So I'm just literally sleeping on a buddy's couch, working part-time, working out in the mornings and afternoons. And then on a Saturday night, I get a call from Coach Zimmern. And, he basically says, "Hey, is this Zach?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, Coach Zimmer, Minnesota Vikings." He's like, we've been watching your film, saw you at Pro Day. We'd love to have you come try out with us. And I'm literally sitting on my couch watching TV, and he's like, "Can you be here on Monday?" I will be there. And so I pack up my small bag that I have, and then I headed back home, and then it was like a mini camp type thing. So it's not like I got signed right on the spot. I wasn't offered any money or anything. But I got invited with about 30 other people or so, and they were all kind of in my shoes. They wanted to make a team. They weren't signed by anyone, but they were just given a tryout. And right when we showed up, unfortunately, I'm not sure if other NFL teams are like this, but there were 30 of us, and they said, "All right, fellas, we got room for 3 people." He's like, "Look around. 27 of you are going to be gone by the end of this camp."
Damn.
And I'm looking at myself, I'm not great at math, but those odds aren't very good. But, I enjoyed the heck out of it. Most of the guys that had been around for like 5-10 years weren't there. But it was mostly rookies, first-year guys, practice squad guys, and then a couple other, people on the squad that were here and there. But it was an awesome experience.
What's your next move after that?
After that, I ended up leaving. Never got a call back. Basically, that's what they said. "All right, go home for the weekend. If we want you back, we'll call you." Nothing happened of that. And then afterwards, I thought, well, it's time to welcome myself to the real world. So I got a job with Milwaukee Tools. So I was selling power tools. It was a pretty basic sales job for the time being. I knew it wasn't something that I wanted to do for my entire life, but it was a good start, pretty good company. And I started doing that. And then food came into play when I moved back to Minnesota for good. And I realized how much awesome food spots there are here compared to Fargo, where there's a couple bars downtown, like a burger shop, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And then when I came back here, my girlfriend and I at the time, because we weren't married, we were just going out to random restaurants. I started taking pictures of food here and there, and then people started reposting it. Bigger pages reposted it, and before I knew it, I was a food blogger. And I didn't even try.
At what point did you realize, you go, "Am I a food blogger?" Because it is these days you see everyone that starts taking pictures of food say, "I'm a food blogger." And I'm not getting the sense that you're that type of person. So at what point in just taking pictures of food because you enjoy it and you're posting, all of a sudden you're getting reposted and you're gaining a following? At what point do you go, am I a food blogger? Or is that ever something that is in your lexicon that this is what I am?
I never really thought of it at the time. I just thought, hey, people like my pictures of food. And then, it just kind of went on for a while like that. And then it finally hit me when I started getting invited to new restaurant openings, if there were menu tastings, if there was a menu change. And I showed up with these people that I recognized that were like famous food bloggers. And I'm sitting myself, oh, I'm on the same list as all these other people. And then at that time, I kind of realized I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, I'm not anybody that has 10,000 followers or crazy numbers like that. But once I actually started to get invited to certain events, that's when I thought, shoot, this is actually the real deal.
Yeah, and it's interesting being on the business side with me that I tend to see more engagement with pages that don't have an insane amount of followers. Like, to me, there's almost more value in working with smaller creators like that because their following is still engaged. They're highly engaged with the people commenting. They're highly engaged with what they're doing. And generally, it's people doing it just because they want to be doing it. It's not the whole, like, businessy, that whole thing when you get into the larger numbers that gets to be a bit more daunting. Twin Cities Donut Brawl, is this something that came directly from your page, or is this separate?
This was from the Vraa Money Eats page. So my partner at the time, Alex Laudner, she actually approached me. She knew how much I loved donuts, and I'd always, every now and then on my stories, I wanted to get a group together for like a donut crawl and go to all these different donut shops. And I never really thought of making a huge event out of it. And Alex is a big event planner, and she does lots of things with local businesses, and kind of like event planning. And then she approached me and said, hey, I think this would be a great time to do some type of big donut event. And then we talked about it, figured out the logistics of how it would work, and then basically the Twin Cities Donut Brawl was born.
How much planning ahead of time did it take before you went from concept to actually launching it?
Oh, it was a long time. When you think about planning an event that's that big, I can't even remember how many people we had now, maybe 500 or so. But it takes a lot of time because the hard part is you have to talk to all of the donut shops and vendors, all the bakeries. You have to plan for a space. You have to make sure all the dates coordinate with everything. You have to work out how you're going to get tables and chairs and cups and coffee, and everything, and make sure the dates can work. People will pull out at the last minute. People won't respond to emails, and, just making sure you have to plan. I mean, 6 to 8 months in advance is kind of when we started. And then we started inviting people. And then it just started to grow and then slowly come together. But it took quite a long time.
So obviously 2020 took this year off for really fun reasons. Yep. How many years was it running prior to that?
Literally just 2.
That's crazy because I came in the second one then. And line out the door. I mean, it was like raining and people are still willing to wait, like lined around the block and just constant people of donuts. And the concept's so simple. But a donut is something that you don't get a chance to try a bunch of them side by side a lot of the time. And so it made sense to me as I'm watching it. And that was one of the first things that I go, I should do something like this for coffee, because that it clicked in my head that I go, there's not many opportunities to taste coffee side by side. So this obsession with donuts, and that's kind of where I came up with the Midwest Coffee Tasters Championship idea, is hosting that. And so I definitely credit that to you and the Twin Cities Donut Brawl, that it's like such a simple concept, but executed so well. And it was really smooth. But I know now, working with multiple vendors, especially when you're asking them like to give away free product, it's an interesting ask. And I think because you had the page, you had credibility, you'd obviously been to all of their shops. They were probably aware of you as the donut guy in the Twin Cities, that when you first reach out, because I think that's one thing that some people might look at and be like, I could do that. I could reach out to, how many donut suppliers do you have in a given year?
I've probably been to every bakery in the greater Twin Cities and every donut shop. But it definitely helped that I had been to a lot of these places before. So when I reached out to the owners, they recognized me. And a lot of them were down for it because nothing had really been done like this before. There was a donut crawl back in like 2014 or 15 that happened, but nothing came out of it. It only lasted for like a year or two. So a lot of the bakeries were actually excited when I reached out to them, And they're like, yeah, we remember doing something like this 5 years ago, and we're so glad it's happening again.
Yeah. It seems so simple, but the coordination to get it all done, and then
it's tough.
Especially in my experience, I found that especially when you're working with somebody that's giving out free stuff, they're going to start asking back for a lot of stuff of like, I want to be at this table. I want to be here. I want to be doing this. I need this and ready to advance. And you're like, everybody gets the same treatment. I'm sorry. And it's like it's a very difficult thing. And so I really appreciate events that you go to and you don't even notice that these things are all happening. Cause I think now having planned a couple by myself, that you realize how much goes into something that seems so simple in execution and such a good idea. And I was obviously, this year was heartbreaking to not see it go down, and we're going to supply coffee for that again, but hopefully some time soon-ish in 2021 we'll be able to get these events going back up and people will be more excited than ever.
Yeah, I was thinking about setting a date for it already sometime in 2021 because it was supposed to be, I think, like in the early, or actually had it scheduled for spring. It was in the fall the year before, and I was thinking about, let's just reschedule it to the fall. This will be over in 4 months. And then once the news started, more information was being gathered. So it's thinking, I don't even know if this is going to be done in like a year or so. So for the time being, it's just canceled. But I would love to see it happen again, next summer or
that happened with
next
us.
fall, whatever.
That happened with us in the coffee tasters. Like, we'll push it 6 months out. Yeah. It'll be like more than ready. And then that thing came and people were like, I assume this is happening. I don't know.
2022.
Yeah. Then it'll be interesting to see at what point that it is cool to start putting events on the calendar. And it's like for sure going to happen. It's so weird. Mm-hmm. Now, before we move on to your venture now, I am curious to pick your brain about Instagram because it's like I continue to go back and forth about Instagram right now. Okay. Has it changed for you over like the past year? I've just noticed that Instagram and social media, there's new channels like TikTok is emerging. Facebook is kind of becoming like where older people yell at each other. And then Instagram kind of is like trying to do the TikTok thing with Reels. They're trying to do the shopping thing like Facebook. And they're trying. How has it changed for you within the last year or so as you continue to grow your page and engage with your following?
I feel like what Instagram used to be was just very basic. I mean, you post a photo, people like it, they comment on it. That's what Instagram was. I loved it. People loved it. But then once people started coming out with new avenues of social media, like you were saying, TikTok and everything else, Instagram kind of tried to be everything, so people didn't have a reason to leave Instagram. So you can come to Instagram and watch TikTok. You can watch Reels. You can click on a sponsored ad and buy something straight from Instagram. And I feel like Instagram grew, but the original quality and content of Instagram kind of got lost. And so the people that I guess were big back in the day that were on Instagram and the originality of it kind of diminished from it.
Because I've noticed as they changed the algorithm for how you view pictures and stories, especially because even stories is something that now we think of as like, yeah, of course Instagram is stories. It's a big thing. When it first came out, everybody was like, they're ripping off Snapchat. This is some garbage. Like, I'm not going to use these freaking.
And now no one uses Snapchat.
Now no one uses Snapchat. So everyone with Reels is like, this is garbage. And I'm like, I don't know. I think they kind of keep nailing it. But even like stories and pictures, the way you're engaging with them, I've noticed recently that I watch, I don't know, maybe like 5 people's stories a day, but it keeps just feeding the same 5 because I usually just watch it in order, and I just, for whatever reason,
noticed the same thing. Yeah.
I made the realization because our stories just are so up and down depending on what we're posting about, and it's like that's what I've noticed is that if somebody hasn't watched your stuff for a few days, you get pushed way down the line because they're going, they don't want this content. Have you noticed with your stories or with your posts, the engagement gets affected by how often you're posting or what type of stuff you're posting?
It does. You're almost forced to be posting, every day, every other day, because if you don't, for whatever reason, Instagram kind of just pushes you back. And if people don't click on your story, the more they click on your story from day to day, the more you get bumped up to the first of their feed. So if you guys kind of unconsciously realize the first stories that you look at when you open up Instagram, those are usually the people that post every single day on their story. Not necessarily their post, but their story. So on my ice cream page, there's this ice cream shop in Philadelphia. He posts a story literally every single day. He probably posts 20 stories maybe. Every time I open up Instagram every morning, he's the very first person that I see. And it's probably because that since he posts every day and I click on him every day, the likelihood of his page to hop to the front totally increases. So for people that post very infrequently or at odd times, people aren't going to see their page as much. So the algorithm forces you to be on a schedule and to post very frequently.
That explains a lot, actually, because I'll go on like story posting like frenzies when we have something big going on. But then other days it's just like I'm actually busy. Like we're actually doing stuff and I don't have the time to post. And during those times that I notice it start dipping. And so it's not necessarily the fact that you are posting so many stories a day, but it's that there's always a story. Oh, and so if you think about it this way, is not even are you posting once a day, but I mean, think of how many times you check Instagram in a day.
Oh, yeah.
If every time you checked it, that account has a new story, you're way more likely to engage with that story. That story is going to get pushed all the way to the front. And then whether it's your favorite account or whether it's the account you want to follow the most, they're going to be getting pushed there. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I need to employ that strategy.
And it's probably similar to, I've noticed it with messages too. So people that I frequently DM or just direct message, their stories will pop up to the front too, even if they don't post stories that often. So I think it's just engagement in general.
Yeah.
So the more engagement you have with somebody, the more likelihood they're going to hop to the top of posts and stories.
So maybe it would even make more sense to, with your stories, have it where you're posting at like random intervals throughout the day so that as people pop back on, there's a new story for them versus what I do is usually just post it all at once. And, then you get to just click through where they watch it all in 10 seconds.
Or they just swipe
it and skip the next one. Yeah. And so maybe that's the best way to do it is like, so that you don't look up and see there's 10 and skip the whole thing. You just go, I'll watch this one. And then later there's one I'll watch. And then all of a sudden, every time you post a story, this person's watching and they're highly engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been the big thing I've been trying to wrap my head around, and I think we may have just figured that out.
Yeah, and Instagram changes the algorithm so often too, because there's sometimes where there's somebody that I follow and I won't see their post for a couple days, and then because I know it's something that I see from them every day, and I feel like they're just the programmers and the software people are probably always trying to change and make it better.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could all change next week. Who really knows? But right now, I think that's how it works.
You get the post that says like 1 day sale, and you're like, oh damn, that's a good sale. You click on it, it's from 3 days ago, and you're like, what the hell, this algorithm? That's actually I'm gonna mess around with that. I'm gonna try to schedule out some story posting and see if that changes how people interact with it. That might be interesting over the next couple of weeks here. So you're working at Milwaukee Tools. Where were you working when you were working for them?
I was here. So I sold at Home Depots basically, and a couple other companies, but it was mainly there around the Twin Cities, south of the Twin Cities. Right when I graduated, I lived at home for about a year. So I was down south of the cities, and then I got an apartment, but my territory was south of the cities for the most part.
So you're selling tools by day.
Yep.
Food posting on the side.
Yep.
At what point? And then I presumably launched Twin Cities Donut Brawl during all of this too.
Yep.
How does this end up lead to what you're doing now with A to Z Creamery? Which, by the way, I honestly did not realize it was your brand, and I knew about it, which is a very good sign. Yeah, no, I'd seen like three or four people post about it. I was like, oh, I hadn't heard of this one before.
Yeah.
And I did not realize it was yours until you were coming in for this episode, which is honestly, maybe it's a bad sign for the algorithm that I follow you closely, but I didn't know you were doing this. But it's a good sign for you that I was aware of it before even knowing it was yours.
Yeah, so it started, back probably March, honestly, right when COVID started. So I got an ice cream maker from my mom for my birthday, which was in February. And I've been a foodie my whole life. I mean, I love food. I love going to restaurants. Food blogging aside, I just have a passion for food. And I've always wanted to be in the food industry working. The opportunities, I interviewed for a couple food jobs right away, but then Milwaukee came up. Kean's, who I work for now, happened. But then when I got this ice cream machine from my mom, I started experimenting with funky flavors. I just wanted to try some unique stuff that when you go to a grocery store, there's not many choices. I mean, Ben & Jerry's comes out with pretty cool flavors every now and then. But for the most part, you're finding cookie dough, cookies and cream, strawberry, whatever it may be. But nobody's doing totally out-of-the-box flavors. So I started experimenting with it at home so I can try it out for myself. Made it for me, my wife, my family, my friends. I started posting about it on the food page, and people started saying, "Hey, are you selling this? Like, where are you making this?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm making it at my house." And then people started offering me money for it, and then people would throw me a $10 bill for a pint of ice cream here and there, and then people would post about it, word of mouth, and how Instagram works. Somebody posts about it, I get 10 new followers. And then they follow me, they pick up ice cream, 10 new followers there. And before I know it, I have this whole crew of people that are waiting for ice cream basically from me every day. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I could actually sell this stuff. So I started making ice cream in the mornings and at night before work, just literally in my kitchen. And I made a new flavor pretty much every day, but it was super small batches. I had one really small machine, the thing where you have the frozen bowl and you put it in your freezer.
Yeah.
And I'd make 10 pints. And then I'd take a picture of it. I'd say, hey, this is up for grabs. I would literally get 150 messages. And I would only have 10 pints available. And I'm like, hey, first 10 messages, the people get it. I would get 200 messages. And I would have to filter through all of these things and say it's the first 10 people, and I'd message them, and then they'd pick it up. And at that time, I really didn't know what I was going to do. Am I going to make this into a business? Am I just going to keep doing it? What am I going to do? And then
What are you calling it at this point? What are you packaging it in? Where are you getting those materials? What are you calling it?
There's so many avenues, tangents I can go on right now.
First question. Okay. At this point, did you have your cottage food license, or were you just slinging?
At first, I was slinging.
That's my boy Bradley over at Donut Trap. He used to be called Dude Nuts, but now he's Donut Trap, and he calls it that because he's like, no, I'm straight trapping.
Well, because at first I had no plans to sell it or do anything. I was literally making it for fun.
Yeah.
But then people would offer me money for it, and at the time I didn't really think of it because I'm like, well, this isn't a business, so I don't need a license.
Yeah.
But then people actually sent me messages, and they're like, hey, are you certified? Are you in a commercial kitchen?
It's a very fine line between I gave my buddy some food and he paid me back for it too. All of a sudden it's I don't really know this person and they're buying from me.
Exactly. So then I would respond to these people. I'm like, no, I'm just making it for fun. They're like, oh, you should really look into this. You can't just make this out of your kitchen and sell it.
Haters.
Yeah. And then I looked into it, and I applied for a cottage food license. After applying for it and actually looking into what a cottage food license mean, it doesn't apply to ice cream.
I was going to say, it doesn't have dairy.
Yeah. And the cottage food license is honestly kind of a joke to get.
It's concerningly easy.
Yeah. I got it within 20 minutes, maybe. So you go online, you read a PowerPoint, you fill out your information, and you click accept, and you have your cottage food license, literally. I mean, you can read through the whole PowerPoint, and it would probably take you 2 hours, but it's like the things where you read to the bottom, accept all terms and conditions. Nobody reads the terms and conditions. So once I realized that this didn't apply to ice cream, I did all this research to figure out what business license do I need for ice cream, and that put me into a whole black hole of shit that I need, basically. Yeah. Reached out to the health department, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, the city, the FDA, got all these different licenses. I had an inspector come out.
To your home?
Well, to the commercial kitchen.
Okay, you skipped that.
Sorry, I skipped that part. No. So
So you find a kitchen.
Yep. I posted on my story and said, hey, I'm trying to expand this business. I want to be able to make ice cream for you guys legally.
Yeah.
So somebody help me out and help me find a kitchen, basically. Because at this time I had quite a few followers, so I'm thinking somebody's got to know a place where I can make ice cream. And this place called Curate, owned by Apex Kitchen, they actually sent me a message and said, hey, we've been following you. We're located in St. Louis Park. We got a commercial kitchen for you here if you want to work with us. And so I met the owner, really cool guy, ends up living literally 2 blocks away from me. We're about the same age. They have an ice cream machine, commercial kitchen, top of the line, brand new. They had built it in March, and they opened up in March, and then they got shut down with COVID. So they were trying to find any business they could. So I'm basically going there, paying rent, helping them while they're struggling because they can't have clients in, so we're helping each other out. So the inspector came out there. They inspected the facility. They had already been inspected by the state and by the county, so everything was good to go. And then from there, I increased from, I think, like 10 to 50, and then 50 to 100, and now I'm making about 150 flavors or pints at a time. Yeah.
How many days a week now are you slinging 150 pints of ice cream?
I'm making that many, like 1 to 2 times a week.
Okay.
I'm in the kitchen almost every day. After work, I'll do some stuff in the mornings sometimes. But I am still working a full-time job. I don't know how long that's gonna, I guess, be the case if I really want to grow this business. But that's another story and things, I have to plan for. But I am pretty much doing ice cream every day.
How did you, at what point during this process did you have a formal name? So when you're in your home kitchen, do you have a name for this, or is it literally just, Vraa Money Eats is making ice cream, do you want some?
It was, I was making this from my Vraa Money Eats page, and then I realized this little ice cream gang that followed me that wanted ice cream all the time. It was hard to keep my food page and my ice cream page separate, because the ice cream side, I just wanted to focus on ice cream. But then I had this food side where I still wanted to, have donuts and review burgers and pizza and everything. And it just kind of clashed. So I said, let's just make a ice cream page. So then people can follow me there. All these DMs that I can filter through will be in one page. And then I can keep my other page separate. And I just named it Vraa Money Creamery. So I had the Vraa Money Eats page and Vraa Money Creamery. And then when I realized that I actually want to make this into a business and make it legit, I thought to myself, Vraa Money Creamery isn't the most logical business name. Kind of like Bradley with Sued Nuts and Donut Trap. Like, people look at it. It's cool because Vraa Money was my nickname in college. And it's kind of a cool thing for me, but it doesn't really make sense to the public and everybody else. So I thought to myself, what's a good name that I can actually name this? And A to Z came about by creating unique flavors from A to Z, or in letters from A to Z, whatever it may be. And it turns out that my wife's name is Alex and mine's Zach. So this is kind of like Alex to Zach Creamery. So it's kind of a two-way deal that works out pretty well.
Nice.
Yeah.
When you're choosing your flavors, how do you go about deciding? Because at this point, you've referenced like funky flavors, different flavors, fun flavors. Give me an example of some and like how you go about deciding those and what makes it different from other ice creams on the market.
Yeah. So a couple of the cooler, more unique flavors have been Flaming Hot Cheetos. I've done a take on elote corn with corn on the cob ice cream, cotija cheese, and cornbread crumble. But then I'll also do, I should say I'll do very out of the box flavors. Those two are kind of middle of the road. I'll do like a dill pickle and peanut butter. I've done a blue cheese with shortbread crust and honey pear compote. And I've done a pronto pup with ketchup and mustard, believe it or not. So I do experiment with those just because, one, I want to see how it will actually work. Two, it might bring in a new audience for people that are absolute hot dog fans, that don't really like ice cream. So it kind of broadens my audience. But at the same time, I'll make, your standard cookie dough, cookies and cream. But I'll put a little A to Z spin on it is kind of what I say. So with like apple pie, I won't just do like apple pie and caramel. I'll do apple pie with like cinnamon caramel and apple pie chunks, or I'll take an original flavor and then put a spin on it to make it a little more unique and high quality, basically.
And that's the type of stuff it takes to stick out, really, because even if I would never wake up in the morning and say, you know what sounds really good today is a dill pickle and peanut butter ice cream. Yeah. But having heard you say that, I go, damn it, I want to try that. And so even if it's not the type of thing where I go, this is what I want, I'm still thinking this is what I want to try. And if you can make something like that taste really good, then they're going, oh, I want to try the classics too, because if they can make this taste good, then the classics must taste really good too. What has the response been from consumers? Because the risk with flavors like this is if someone gets it and it is just kind of like gimmicky, or it is just kind of a one-time thing. You know, there's some beers like that I think of where it's like you see it, you taste it, you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting, but I would never get another one of these. How's the response been from the consumers on these like really weird flavors?
Actually pretty good. I haven't got any... I should say I've gotten very few. Probably I can count on the number of times on one hand that people just say, I don't like this flavor at all. But those are the flavors. The Prano Pup, I got, I think, 2 messages there. And I mean, I'm selling 150 of these pints. And if I'm only getting 2 responses that say I don't like this, honestly, that's a win for me at the end of the day. But the way the business model works is I'll come out with one flavor at a time. And if I come out with something funky and out of the box and people don't like it, they're never going to see that flavor again, because I make one flavor, I have 150 pints of it, and then I'll move on to the next flavor. It's not something where I have a dill pickle and peanut butter and I keep it in stock for good. I'll make it once and it won't happen again. So if people don't like it, well, next week you might like something else, and the next 10 flavors you might like those. So it's nice because even if somebody doesn't like a flavor, the likelihood of them liking the next flavor or the flavor after that goes up a lot more.
What was it like going from kitchen to commercial-sized batches? What kind of research did you have to do on ingredients and sourcing to be able to scale up to a commercial level and still maintain the quality that you wanted?
So quite a bit. Most of the recipes that I used when I was just working out of my house, I took I did a lot of R&D and different recipe testing to figure out like what my ideal recipe or ingredients are. And everything was in terms of cups, basically, 1 cup of milk, 1 cup of cream, 1 cup of sugar, and things like that. And when I'm moving into a commercial kitchen, I'm making 15, 20 gallon batches. You're not going to take a little cup, 1 cup, 2 cup, 3 cup, 4 cup. So then I started to get together this math ratio. So instead of using cups and milliliters and things to basically make the ice cream, I did it all in percentages. So I have a percentage of milk and cream and sugar, and then I convert that into grams. So I have this huge scale. I'll put a huge pot or container. I'll take a 25-pound bag of sugar and just pour it into this vat until I get my precise amount, and then I cook it over this huge braising pan that can hold about 15 gallons worth. So going from just a little pot over the stove to huge commercial kitchen equipment was a big change, but just being able to alter my recipe, and luckily the kitchen had all this stuff for me, so I didn't have to go out and figure out what I need. They had it for me, which was a nice help. But just getting used to it and converting the recipes was a little bit of a change.
And this is fascinating to me because this is so the opposite of every other food business that I've had on here, where they have the product, they have the thing, they are making it, doing R&D, and then they go, okay, we're ready to launch. We got to go find customers. And it's almost like you took this opportunity of having this built-in following that you built through your Instagram page and were able to almost accidentally, in a way, turn this into a thing that you love doing for fun at home, and all of a sudden turns into this business. And those are the really, those are the compelling businesses where you're like, I don't like need to do this. I don't necessarily even want to start this business in a weird way, but because it's working, I want to now, and because it is something I enjoy doing. And the commercial kitchen's definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
How's that been? What was that process like with the Department of Agriculture and all of them with the once you found that commercial kitchen, how was that process in getting all those certifications once you were there?
It took quite a long time. I had to talk to a lot of people. I got forwarded on to tons of different agents and project managers and things of that nature. It was more or less just a lot of forms I had to fill out. The amount of like inspections and on-site work was pretty limited, but there were just a lot of forms that go into it because you have to certify your LLC, then you have to get a DBA, which is doing business as, and then you have to pay a fee for all that. And then once you have that, you have to get inspected, or you have to basically say what type of business you are. Once you figure out what type of business you are, then you have to contact that agency. So it was a lot of just working down the line. You start here, talk to this person, get certified, move on to the next step. And there were probably about a dozen or 20 different steps that I had to go through before it was all said and done.
The HACCP procedure, the hazard action critical control points of every single step of making it, what could go wrong, and then if it did go wrong, how do you prevent that? What preventative steps do you have here? And it's so funny because as I'm filling these things out, the answer so often for coffee is like, I look at it, make sure it's like not, like just make sure it looks safe. And they're like, okay. And you're like, oh, that's what you need for that step? Okay. And then there's other parts where like, you're like, I don't have anything for this. And they're like, where's your recall procedure? Where's your, all these different things in place? And it's so dependent on who you talk to. At one point I was talking to, I'll leave organizations out of it, but I was talking to somebody from one organization and they say, it's going to be really hard to get this certified with us. It'd be easier to go with this other one. And I was like, wait, so two organizations that both work for Minnesota, you're telling me you might not certify me, but that another one would certify me to do the exact same thing we're doing. It's just like who you talk to, when you talk to them, like what forms you have filled out. And the commercial kitchen, we did that with Philterra on the cold brew side. And fortunately, Brandon is like beyond detailed. And I think a lot of the time is just having all that stuff up front, all the notes and everything they might need makes that whole process so much easier. But having the facility built and already inspected, so you're just going, I'm working here, and I just more or less need to prove to you that I'm safe in my procedures.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it was with me too. Since this Curate Kitchen had already been certified, I just showed up. I'm like, hey, this is where I'm going to be working. She said, okay, well, has it been inspected? They gave her over the sheet that the county had inspected it, and then I think she just looked at like the fridge and the freezer, to make sure that everything was in the temperature rating, looked at my ice cream machine, and then from there it was, pretty much good since they had been certified already. More forms.
That's awesome, man. I'm so it's really exciting to me to hear that. I can't wait to try it, and I'm like honestly a little embarrassed that I didn't know it was yours. I was
like, gotta get you set up with something.
I was for real because I saw it. I was like, oh, A to Z. Somebody posted about that. I was like, oh, I've been dying to try this. And I was like, huh.
That's so funny.
I was like, I haven't heard of that, which is weird because I'm usually pretty on the ball when it comes to stuff. I was like, I'll have to check that out. And then I reached out to you, and then I was like, oh my God, this is him, which is so exciting to see because I actually did know you were making ice cream in your kitchen and slinging them out of your kitchen. So it's so funny that somewhere along the line, maybe it's the Instagram algorithm we were talking about messed with me, and I lost contact with what you're doing. But
yeah, and I kept it pretty separate just because I'm not a big fan or proponent of people that like push their businesses or like on their personal page they always like post about their job or they try and do all this selling like on a personal side. Like keep your personal and business separate. Like if I follow you because I want to know like what you're doing on weekends and where you're eating, don't tell me about like, no offense to like real estate people, but don't tell me about like your real estate or people that are trying to sell insurance. Don't be posting about food and then say, hey, do you want some financial advice? It's like, just keep it separate, please. Like I will reach out to you if I need something. So for me, I know ice cream and food kind of go hand in hand, but I kept food very separate and ice cream very separate.
I think that's really smart for your own personal life too, is I think when you start to promote, which like my personal Instagram page, I keep it private. It's literally, I think just people that know me, follow me, and I post a ton of coffee stuff there, but it's still like, it's still my private personal page. And it's not like it's not a food page. It's just mostly pictures of coffee and other stuff that I do.
Yeah.
And it does feel a little gross when you when you know someone or follow someone and you're like, is this what are we doing here? Like,
yeah,
I've referenced this before on the podcast, but it's like, what's your brand? And I'm like, oh, you mean Folly? Like it's the coffee? They're like, no. You, Rob, what's your brand? And I'm like, what are you talking? It gets so gross.
Coffee, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you mean?
And so that's why it's smart that I think you separate them out, because you're like, this food stuff is what you do for fun. It's like you enjoy it. And the second you feel like you need to do something to promote business, it can get gross. And so to separate it out and just have it be like, I'm going to sell you the stuff like, if you want it, it's over here. I'm going to be selling it to you over here. Promoting it, cross-promoting is obviously a great strategy, but then it's totally separate, and they know, hey, if I want to get sold to, if I want to see what's going on, if I want to buy these products, I head over here versus here's where I just enjoy like the food content, which I think that's a smart thing. And it is a tough decision because you have such a good following and such an engaged following that there is probably a little bit of pressure of like, oh, I'd love to be posting about the ice cream more here. But I think long-term with ice cream, it's better to keep it separate. Do you have, like for your website, are you have a way of collecting emails and all that good stuff?
Yep. So on the website, a2zcreamery.com, you can subscribe on the bottom of the page to basically get put on an email list. So every time I release a flavor, you'll get a notification or an email that says pecan pie, whatever it is available. So go online and order. So you can get an email that way, or I'll post on Instagram on a story that says this flavor is live. So there's two different ways that you can get notified.
What website platform are you using?
Wix.
Wix. I'm not super familiar with Wix. Do they have the option to do a pop-up where it's like save 10% off on your next order if you sign up?
I don't know if they have that.
I would dude, that's one of the things I learned during COVID.
Yeah.
Email list, man. Because even if someone's like, I want to know, I follow them on Instagram. I'll see it when they post on Instagram. But here's the problem is what we were just talking about is
stuff can get lost.
An
email will literally get sent to you and sent at that time.
Yeah.
So there's,
exactly. And so you might have people that actually want to buy your product, or they want to try every new flavor that comes out, and they go, I follow them on Instagram. Because not many people go out of their way to sign up for stuff like your super devoted customers will do that, but it's these customers that like, they're not going to seek it out. But if they're like, oh yeah, I do want that. And one of the things I've taken away from just these whole closures is that like email list is definitely our number one focus right now. I would definitely look into that because I'm going to sign up for it because I like these when I'm so jaded sometimes when you're like, we have really unique flavors. I'm like, all right, bud.
Yeah.
You're like, we had a raspberry swirl to this one. You're like, So those flavors sound really, really cool. Yep. So a2zcreamery.com, on Instagram,
A to Z Creamery.
And obviously you got the Vraa Money Eats.
Yep.
We'll keep an eye out for Twin Cities Donut Brawl when things get back to normal.
Yep.
Anything else? Anything else you want to plug or promote?
That's about it. I mean, I got the donuts. I got the personal page. Right now I'm trying to grow A to Z Creamery as much as possible. So
that's awesome. We'll have to do some sort of giveaway or something. Try to get that bumped up a bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do some cross promoting here, man.
Yeah. Maybe a Folly coffee flavor.
I'd be so down for that. You know I would be.
Coffee beans?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. You know I'd be down for that.
For sure.
Sick. Well, thanks for coming on. I will end it like I end every other one and say have a nice day.